Welcome to the Big D Boston Mock Draft, your home for the latest in news and analysis as we head into the fantasy football season. Here is your host, Big D Boston. And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first edition of the Bosses Mock Draft Series. As we prepare to go into the fantasy football season, I decided I'd go ahead and give a shot at doing a mock draft here on the channel, and I may potentially stream my actual draft either to Twitch or I'll stream it here or something along those lines. The Bosses Tickets podcast will be coming out hopefully tonight or tomorrow. We had a bit of a technical difficulty with the original audio recording, so I have to redo it, and a lot of new news has come out in regards to the topics that we'll be discussing in that podcast. So I'm basically doing an entire reshoot of the original podcast, so my apologies for that, but that will be coming out hopefully in the next day or so. But I figured I'd go ahead and get this video up, since I did promise something new, and this will go under the Bosses Tickets portion of the channel, but it is not a direct correlation with the podcast if you need to, get technical and such. So this is actually the first time I've ever used the full draft client on NFL.com. I was a ESPN guy. I still use ESPN as where I host my league. I am part of NFL leagues, but my main league is on ESPN, and I will open the possibility to the channel doing a community mock draft and a community fantasy football league if you so choose to. Get in the comments, get some support going. If I can see a few of you guys, actively doing that. I might also try and do a YouTubers community mock draft and fantasy football league, where I can get some of the other guys that I associate with here on YouTube to come together and do a little fantasy football league this fall. But we'll all see how that plays out. Just remember, any suggestions you have for the channel, always go in the comment section, and I'm always willing to address them accordingly. So I am picking 8th, which is probably not the best for the purposes of recording this and making it compelling to the viewers, but, oh well. We have about 40 seconds until the draft starts. And don't think, if any of you are watching this, this is my exact strategy. Just understand, I like to entertain, and I like to inform. Thank you. But anyway, no, this is not my exact strategy. You cannot watch this video and somehow find a way to beat me in fantasy football. I change my strategy for every mock draft to see what's working this current season climate. How people are sort of taking the news as it comes, I guess. So, without further ado, it is draft time. If this does get a bit annoying, I think I'm just going to turn the sound off for now, and I'll put some, background music on. So the first guy comes off the board, Antonio Brown. That's pretty much expected. Adrian Peterson, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it's not the worst pick, but it's not the best. And I do see that Todd Gurley is going higher as we get closer and closer to the season. Last year I had Todd Gurley on my team, and I will tell you, if you're looking to pick up a running back, and if for some reason maybe Yahoo or CBS is not having Gurley evaluated as high and he's still going on average maybe in the 8th or 10th position, I highly encourage you go and pick him up, because that is really a versatile player that can help your team in many ways throughout the season. Obviously, as long as there are no injuries, but that's a possibility for any player. So let's see, we have 3 people on auto pick right now out of a 12 team. This is a standard draft, no PPR or anything like that. I haven't played a PPR league yet. I've only been playing fantasy football for a little bit of time now, but I do stick to standard format leagues and obviously mock drafts. I am interested in potentially joining a 2-quarterback league this fall, because that seems like a really entertaining league to do, but It's not an immediate issue, and it looks like the guy who is holding the 3 spot is AFK. So sorry we had to sit through his pick. Thankfully, it's only a minute 30 per person. That's why I kind of almost wanted to do an ESPN league, because those are only a minute per pick, and it moves a lot faster. So Gurley did come off the board. That leaves me with an interesting situation, as we've already had 3 running backs come off, 3 wide receivers, so everything is not necessarily tilted, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's in the best position. If you want to get a high level guy, you're going to have to kind of settle here. But I know top 8 pick, that's really that area where people start to debate, because the 10 and 9 positions are always questionable. Do we throw them lower? Do we throw them higher? It's that 8 spot that's supposed to be solidified. There's not, oh yeah, that's the top 8. Those are solid players. But, interesting. That is interesting. So it looks like Team 7, the guy in front of me, is our girl, potentially, is also gone AFK. And therefore will leave us to have to sit through another minute 30 of nothingness. And it appears they are not, so I am on the clock. Let's see what we have available. I don't know why Antonio Brown is still up there. I might just minimize that whole... Oh, that's wrong. Minimize. So yes, 8 people remain active. We have AJ Green on the board. I like AJ Green. Excuse me. But knowing Andy Dalton's troubles over the past few years as far as doing anything with his team, I think that it might be the years that Cincinnati's wheels kind of fall off the bus, and it might start at the top with Mr. Dalton. So I'm going to avoid AJ Green, and I'm going to take what I believe is a safer pick in Ezekiel Elliott, who... well, I'm not necessarily getting cheap or anything, is a bit of a better move, in my opinion. Because rookie running backs are always a shot in the dark to an extent, because last year when I picked Todd Gurley, a lot of people, and Todd Gurley was coming off the ACL injury. He actually... didn't play for those first few weeks, so I was able to steal Todd Gurley in the 5th round, and a lot of people said, oh, well, you could have gotten another running back for that pick, and, I did, to an extent, have to work around not having a true flex guy or a true premium quality flex guy for a few weeks after I was waiting on Gurley to come back, but if you can get a steal pick, you got to take it. So that's always something that you can find usually in rookie running backs. But in a case like Ezekiel Elliott, he was such a highly regarded player that he went off the board pretty quickly this round. Now picking at pick 17, I like to go off of ADP. That's what I give more credit to, I guess you could say. Rather than ranks. I understand the purpose of ranks, but I like average draft position. It sort of gives me a better feel of where things should be going and where players should be going, even though it is early in the mock draft season to be really basing your mock drafts on ADP. It's very important to at least give it a full regard whenever you're making your picks. Now, there's a couple guys I had on my team last year in this little cluster, Eddie Lacy and Doug Martin. Both of them played good for a certain portion of the year. I often left Doug Martin on the bench regrettably, as he had a lot of good weeks and I didn't have him activated, and I think that that's going to have to lead me at this point as I'm taking a wide receiver. I have to. I'm not overpaying for Brandon Marshall, and I don't really want Alshon Jeffrey, so I'm going to reach a little bit and pick Mike Evans up here because I have to have him. I can't take the risk of not getting a wide receiver, as I don't pick again until 32. So if we're looking at that average draft position, like I said, I can probably still get a pretty good running back at that spot with a CJ Anderson, Carlos Hyde, guys like that. I do not like Jonathan Stewart this year in fantasy football. I feel like he played his best year last year, and it's going to be a rather sharp decline heading into this year. So I would advise you to kind of stay away from Jonathan Stewart. I feel like the age thing is finally going to catch up to him, and it's just time to, I guess take him in the late rounds like I did a Larry Fitzgerald last year. And if it ends up working out for you like last year's Larry Fitzgerald picks, yeah, go ahead and do it. But I definitely wouldn't waste a top probably even 4-5 rounds on a guy like Mr. Excuse me, very tired right now. Goodness, Jonathan Stewart. It's just not a valid pick to be making, in my opinion. I mean, the guy can produce. I'm not going to say he's going to have like a 500-yard year and 100 yards receiving. I'm not saying it's going to be that much of a drop-off, but I just don't see him coming back and putting anywhere near the numbers that got him this draft position so far this year. So I definitely would watch out for that heading into the year. And we're now going to have a couple auto picks go through, which will speed things along. Cam Newton still left on the board as we enter round 3. I have my eye on right now, but I'm not going to go and disclose anything because I want to see how it plays out. Don't need to jinx myself or anything here, as I am getting into my rather sequential picks. 9 spaces in between me and them. Or excuse me, 8 spaces in between me and my other pick. Excuse me, that little brief silence. Had to respond to a message. And we're about to get you back on the clock, and it looks like I'm going to be able to get my guy, but I'm going to have to once again pull another reach out. Even though it's not necessarily a reach by rank, it is a reach by average draft position, and it's, to be honest, a rather, I wouldn't say sketchy pick on my part, but it is a pick that I'm not entirely comfortable with. After sort of watching his production the last couple years, if this player will be able to truly have that breakout season and can play that number 2 role in a starting offense, like many people believe that he should be able to. But we'll see how this guy goes. And the thing with ESPN is that special teams has a lot more weight. If you're wondering about, say, this is your first fantasy football league and you want to know where to go, what service to use, I honestly recommend ESPN for the beginner. It's a little bit more concise, a little bit more straightforward, not as detailed, and you do lose a bit of your, I guess, customization or detail to the extent of what you can see for your picks and whatnot and how your team is evaluated. But ESPN is a lot better at delivering the potent information as fast as possible. So I will deliver this pick as fast as possible, and I'll explain it afterwards. And we're going to take Jarvis Landry right here with our 3rd round pick. And the reason why I took Jarvis is because you can look at his stats up here. Last year had 1,157 yards with 4 touchdowns and another 100 rushing yards with a rushing touchdown. Now, the thing with Jarvis Landry is he's not in a position to catch as many touchdowns as what I believe a wide receiver 2 should. I just don't believe Ryan Tannehill down there in Miami quite has the ability to put Jarvis Landry in a position to catch all those touchdowns. Now, Jarvis Landry is still a very strong player because he's so versatile and can do so many things. You know, personally, myself being very much a fan of LSU football, watching him and Odell Beckham Jr., these are virtually the same player. They just have a few unique skill sets that differ them. And if you take Odell in a top 5 situation, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to take Jarvis Landry in a top 30 position. It's just the caliber of offense he's surrounded by to put him in position to catch those vital touchdowns and rack in the big fantasy points for us. So now with my 4th round pick, you're going to find that I don't particularly care to take quarterbacks. I'm just going to go and tell you that. That's generally known by anyone who plays with me in any sort of fantasy football. I'm not big on quarterbacks. I don't see their value as much as other people do. Now, you will note also that I'm now going into the 41st pick, and I only have 1 running back. So we're going to go and pick up another one. And because we sort this by ADP, we can look at the series of players. These 2 guys are a bit too high for me. They just haven't produced. I'm going to have to take Latavius Murray from the Oakland Raiders, as I believe that this year we'll see a lot better overall production by Derek Carr in that passing offense, which I believe will allow the Raiders to be able to expand their rushing offense. And with the departure of Peyton Manning from the scene in Denver, that allows Oakland to potentially have the potential, even though they are playing against that Denver defense, have the potential to be closer in games later in games. And what I mean by that is that you won't see them go all air after, say, the 3rd quarter trying to play catch up, because whenever you pick running backs that are generally on losing teams, it's harder for them to be able to get enough serious touches to get those fantasy points that you need, because they have to go air happy as it moves towards the end of the game, and they're left in a position to, the only way they can win is if they are on a full air assault. So that's why I very much encourage you to take players that have a solid air assault that can do things, but also are complemented by a overall team that has the potential to stay in games late. Now, as we head on to our 5th round pick here, pick number 56, I am going to have to look at the tight end position. It's getting to about that point in the draft where I start looking at the tight end. I generally see the tight end as a very important position. A lot of people will put off their tight end selections, and I kind of understand it to an extent, but I see the tight end as just as important as your flex. So, are your W/R, as it's beautifully listed over in the team roster over there on NFL.com fantasy football mock drafts. So I will take the same guy I took last year. I think he's in a good team overall to create the amount of production you need to be an elite tight end. I also would recommend Coby Fleener from the Saints. If you're looking at tight ends to select, I will personally be drafting Travis Kelce. The guy got injured. If he wasn't injured, I honestly believe he would be a 1,000-yard tight end last year. And, you're starting to push 130, 135 fantasy points if, he pulls in another touchdown and is able to get another 100 yards. Travis Kelce, for me personally, in the early part of the year, was the reason why I was able to win the amount of games that I did, because his production honestly would make up generally 10 to 5 points difference between myself and the other players. So you always want to I recommend you always put the tight end position on a very high pedestal, and you don't wait on tight ends, because tight ends can kill you. And if you don't have an elite tight end that can put up 10 or 15 to Gronk's 20, you will get killed. If you don't have a tight end that can put up 10 to 15 on whatever wide receivers, 15 to 20, you will get killed. So it's very important to have that diversity within your lineup. Now, we're getting back to another average draft position setting to where you'll see a lot of options here. You'll see a defense. People want to take a kicker. It's this weird part of the draft, that round 6 and 7, where nobody knows what anyone's picking, in my opinion, because you can go so many different directions. And I do also value defenses, but I have to value this other position more because I don't have a backup right now in my wide receiver or running back position. So we're going to go and take one. I do not recommend you take Larry Fitzgerald this year. He just had a monster year last year, but he's getting older, and I think that was another, like I said, peak year, just like Jonathan Stewart, and it's just not a solid pick. And I'm going to go ahead and go wide receiver because I feel like the wide receivers are either quality or not as compared to running backs that can vary week by week, and as I have 10 seconds left, I need to hurry up and make my pick and shut up. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jordan Matthews out of Philadelphia. And I'm taking Jordan here because I feel like in the new Philadelphia system, there's got to be a target. There's got to be, you have a new quarterback, someone's got to be the target, and I believe Jordan Matthews can be that target for the Eagles. It will allow a bond to be bred, and I think that bond might be forced a bit to be cultivated. So I'm going to go ahead and just take Jordan Matthews on a whim here. I don't have his ADP up there, but overall he wasn't bad last year. You see, he pulled in over 145 fantasy points, so I can't complain about the season. But I will tell you that if you are truly looking to take a shot on a wide receiver, I'd recommend Jordan Matthews. He's been pretty solid for me in my mock drafts so far up to this point. And right now we're gonna go ahead and head back and just get another backup. Gonna take a running back here, and at this point in the draft, you're stuck with a lot of options. There's a lot of guys that are gonna be coming off an injury. There are a lot of guys that will have maybe underperformed last year or are new to the scene and have overperformed. So as we take a look here and go ahead and see where these next two guys pick. Really wish if people would go AFK, they'd go ahead and throw themselves on auto pick, but most of the time people don't do it. They just leave or whatever the case is, and you get stuck with them sitting there forever. So right here we can look at our running back options that are left, and we're gonna take a look at the ADP. Running backs, you can honestly skip them here if you want to take a quarterback. If you want that Tony Romo, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, all those options, they're there at this spot, and it's not a bad pick to take them here. I just personally don't like it. If you want to go defense here, like I said, the 7th round is sort of an up to you. How much do you value that position? You still can get guys for some reason at this point in this league. I don't know what I guess it's mostly computers picking, but to have the Seahawks and the Broncos both still available at this point is rather impressive. And that would compel me to an extent, but I need another running back. So I'm going to go ahead and take a guy that I feel like will have to be a big help to Matthew Stafford with the departure of Calvin Johnson, and that is Amir Abdullah from the Lions. I'm going to go and draft him. And the Lions are an interesting situation because with the departure of Calvin Johnson, that has been Matthew Stafford's guy. That's the guy for years and years. That has been Matthew Stafford's main guy, his boy, his pal, his friend. So I guess we're going to have to see a new Matthew Stafford to an extent. The guy did throw for over 5,000 yards at one point. And, he's been solid numbers-wise. It's just that the team is so horrid that I don't think he honestly gets the recognition he deserves. He's not the best fantasy quarterback. He does have his own set of mistakes and issues. But the guy honestly can do some stuff for that team. Um, and like I said, when that load is taken off, you get to see a lot better, more fluid action from the running game. So I'm going to take the bet that Matthew Stafford will be putting up some bigger numbers in Detroit that will ease Amir's potential workload and get him more quality carries. And right now it is round 8 at pick 89. I don't know why the Broncos are still available, so I'm going to draft them. I like it. It's a good pick. I'm going to go ahead and move into round 9 after these auto picks go ahead and make their moves. And so far, if we look at the team roster, it's not shaping out too bad. Ezekiel Elliott, Ezekiel Elliott, Latavius Murray as my running back 1 and 2, Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, Travis Kelce, Jordan Matthews, the Broncos defense, and Amir Abdullah. That's not a bad team through 104 picks. And I'm going to go and take a peek here so I can have time and see what's left as far as quarterbacks go. Let's see. We have Tony Romo. I just can't trust Tony Romo coming off of injury this year. I think it might have been best for him to just walk into the sunset last year. I've realized Tony Romo's a rugged guy. He's been around, now almost 10 years in that position in Dallas. And sure, he's been great, but at times, Tony Romo's Tony Romo. And while I respect what the man has done, he's not that good. And he's not worth taking that pick here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the dice here. I'm going to guess that we won't see another pick of a quarterback until the next round. So I'm going to go and take a look at what my running back wide receiver options here. I don't like Frank Gore. I don't like Jeremy Langford. I think I'm just going to have to take a wide receiver here, as much as it pains me to say, and I will have to pick Michael Crabtree, because I'm telling you, the Raiders, while I think they're going to narrowly miss the playoffs. I'll go ahead and tell you guys. I think it's a narrow playoff miss. I don't think it's a guarantee that they automatically miss the playoffs. But, the offensive system that's being built around Derek Carr has some meat to it. It has some legitimacy. It's not the best, but it certainly is capable of handling certain parts of producing offense that can give that defense in Oakland a shot to win a game. I'm not saying that the offense will win any game for the Raiders, because obviously that's not going to happen. And the Raiders, I still think, would be a 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 type of team trying to fight for a wild card spot at this point, based on what I've seen from that team. If you take their players and sort of mold them together as one, it leaves a lot of options as to what can and cannot be done in regards to taking your offensive firepower to the next level. Because last year Derek Carr put up some good numbers. They weren't elite, but they weren't bad. We'll take a look at his stats right here. Almost 4,000 passing yards, a 3-to-1 ratio on touchdowns to interceptions, and 138 rushing yards. I'm not complaining about that. And I don't understand why so many people do. That's why I'm going to take him right here with my 10th round pick. But, and in a lot of leagues, you could see me or anyone else pulling the trigger much earlier on Derek Carr. The wide receivers that are being put around him are solid wide receivers. Michael Crabtree, Amari Cooper, all these different guys are good. But they need running back production, and they need solid and legitimate defense. And that's what's gonna boost them over a team like the Chargers, or a team like, actually, one moment, where did they lead the Rams? Were the Rams still? Yeah, okay, so the Rams were in the NFC West. I was gonna say for a moment Did they lead the Rams in the NFC North? Sorry to go on a tangent here, but that would be quite awkward. But nevertheless, and I know that's NFC and we're talking AFC team as far as if it can make the playoffs. But you look at teams like Kansas City, you look at teams like San Diego that are both always on that cusp of making the playoffs, wild card teams. And I see a lot more potential out of the Oakland team than I do out of San Diego team in particular, because Melvin Gordon was not a solid enough player last year to show legitimacy that he can be the guy at running back over there. Phillip Rivers is starting to show that he can have flaws. So overall, the potential for the Chargers is steadily decreasing, as well as the Chiefs with their running back injury problems and so forth and so on. All of these issues could show to be significant issues for those teams going forward. Now that we're in round 11, I'm going to go ahead and pat down of my skill players. And Laquan Treadwell, I feel like, has a lot of potential regarding his status with a Teddy Bridgewater up in Minnesota. If I didn't just draft a wide receiver 2 rounds ago, I would openly and fully suggest you go ahead and go Laquan Treadwell. Or, just in general, if you have the potential to take him, I'd suggest you take him. But here I can't. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're going to look exclusively at running backs here. D'Angelo Williams, another overdrafted, older running back. There's only one real guy here I could see that has the potential, and that is Darren McFadden in Dallas. I actually won't take him because I already have Ezekiel Elliott. So I'm going to take Chris Johnson out of Arizona. He is an older running back. I understand. Give me all the flack. But, the guy still has potential. Put up 814 rushing yards and, a few touchdowns last year. Lost 2 balls. We look at the projected stats. There are none for whatever reason. It's kind of you can say it's an impulse buy, taking Chris Johnson, but I do, to an extent, believe that he could not break 1,000 yards, but say take his production up from what he did last year in a situation where he had 3 rushing touchdowns to potentially, if you take even 64 of his yards away, 750 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, 150 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. That's a much better year for him with, 1 lost fumble. I think that's legitimate, and I think that's a reason why you should consider taking Chris Johnson in your drafts this year. Now, I need another wide receiver, and I know Drew Brees is going to throw the ball all over. Willie Snead is a solid wide receiver. Marcus Colson did leave the Saints. If you can't take Brandon Cooks and you want a solid wide receiver that is going to be a happy benefactor of that Saints pass-happy offense, take Willie Snead. Guy was solid. Put in a lot of good work. 1 lost fumble. I don't know why NFL.com still doesn't have the projected stats. I just remembered that they don't have them out yet. They really need to get on top of that. Excuse me. As you know, ESPN and other leagues do, in fact, have that information already loaded into their systems. So it is definitely a thing that the NFL should do. Like I said it earlier, if you are considering what league or what service, whatever you want to call it, service league provider of your draft host, where you want to go. That's another reason why I'd have to say ESPN, at least for the newer people. It's just a bit more well-defined and helps you find the stuff you need to find. Well, this is my roster. I would like to kind of see it broken down by position. So that's RB, 3 wide receiver, RB, wide receiver, RB, wide receiver. I think I'm going to go back-to-back running backs and then take a kicker last. I have no shame in taking a kicker last. And running backs do often, at least in my experience, go down a lot faster than the wide receivers do. So I'm very comfortable taking a running back later in the draft. There are definitely a lot of interesting options available here, but I believe the most likely option to have a big sort of semi-impactful year would have to be James Starks in Green Bay, because last year, if you look, whenever Eddie Lacy went down, James Starks was able to put up solid numbers, and he's sort of an all-over-the-field player. You can see he almost put 1,000 yards total yardage between rushing and receiving with 5 touchdowns. Those are good stats, and I think it's worth it to take him in a late-round situation. I wouldn't necessarily call him a steal, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you're making a bad choice by picking him this late, or choosing to pick him this early to another extreme. So I said I was going to go back-to-back running back, but I definitely think that based on ADP and based on what I'm just seeing is available, it might make a little bit more sense if I can pick up the guy I want to take a wide receiver. Okay, so now you can take a look and see, who's who of this wide receiver selection that's left. And overall, it's not bad. If I had to suggest you take a wide receiver, I would say Victor Cruz, but simply he's not going to be in this equation because we are taking a running back. So advising you all in that situation, I would definitely have to take a chance, at least, on I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name, but Mr. West out there in Kansas City. The guy put up good numbers last year, weren't great, but after the Jamal Charles injury, he did what he needed to do, and it is going to have to be the Chiefs running back coming off the board. Can I pull up his career stats in a new tab? Oops, that did open another tab if I click on it. We're going to close that one moment. Hey, look, it's that guy. I don't have anything sensitive on there necessarily. Actually, no, it doesn't even do anything. My apologies. I forget that's a whole other webpage. Yeah, stats last year were okay. They weren't great, but, they did the job. What are you going to do in that situation? All right, lastly, we are in round 15. It is time to make that final pick, fill out the roster. And there's one glaring hole, and it is indeed the kicker position. So we all know that basically using ADP on kickers is worthless because they're all very low, late picks. So to an extent, what I like to stress is how well a kicker can kick the long field goals and how well they also make their point after attempts. So by overall evaluating this, our guys say, just for the point of argument, Detroit's kicker here, he had the 36 made point afters. That's real good, but he only made the 5 50 plus yard field goals. Meanwhile, this guy here had 48, but he only made 2. So in this situation, I have to just take the old GOAT, Sebastian Janikowski, because he puts up the number that I like to see for point after attempts. I can't give it to you because that's, secret, top secret. But, he has a leg. We know his leg. He's not the most accurate kicker, but at this point, I'd be willing to take him. And I know it's a Raiders guy. I hate to kind of, just be flooding Raiders picks here, but their guys do what they need to do, and I can generally get someone else to fill his spot as a kicker. I just kick usually one of my other players, skill position players, heading up to the bye week of the kicker. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take Sebastian Janikowski, and that's going to kind of end it for this draft. At least it is not necessarily a bad draft or anything. It's just I'm just trying to convey to you guys my thoughts and my strategies playing fantasy football as a rather novice player, in regards to some of the other players that I see about and am in close relation with. So that has been our draft here. We can take a look at my team: Ezekiel Elliott, Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, Latavius Murray, Travis Kelce, Jordan Matthews, Amir Abdullah, the Denver Broncos defense, Michael Crabtree, Derek Carr, Chris Johnson, Willie Snead, James Starks, I can't say that, West, and Sebastian Janikowski. Overall, not a bad team. I can't complain. And that's just how I feel about it. So if you guys need other help with fantasy football, or you want to have some sort of suggestion on who I should team up with to do something, I will make my best efforts to do so. And especially if you know that they speak of me on their channel, that also helps. So once again, guys, this is Big D Washington, personal boss on the internet. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.